Story by Mythic Tales of Africa. The first time I saw her shadow move without her, I froze. We were walking back to her apartment, the city quiet around us. It was one of those rare nights in Lagos when the usual buzz of life seemed to pause. No distant honks, no laughter from bars, just an eerie stillness. The streetlights cast long shadows on the cracked pavement, and Ada's was one of them. At first, I wasn't paying attention. She was laughing, and I was watching her, caught up in the way her eyes sparkled under the faint light. Then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something strange. Her shadow didn't move like it should. It lagged behind, hesitating as if unsure whether to follow her or not. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "See what?" she replied, her smile faltering. I didn't know how to explain it. Her shadow had twisted and stretched unnaturally, reaching toward the darkness at the edge of the streetlight's glow. When I looked directly at it, it froze, perfectly mimicking her again. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile, but my heart was racing, and my palms were damp with sweat. That night, I lay awake in my room, the memory of her shadow haunting me. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew what I'd seen wasn't normal. Something wasn't right with Ada. 3 months earlier, I met Ada on an ordinary afternoon. She walked into the garage where I worked, a car refusing to start. From the moment she stepped out of the driver's seat, I was mesmerized. She had a presence about her, something magnetic. "Can you fix it?" she asked, her voice soft but confident. "Of course," I replied, eager to impress her. As I worked on her car, we struck up a conversation. She told me she was new to the area, that she'd just moved from Ogun State for work. By the time her car was running again, I'd worked up the courage to ask for her number. Our first date was at a small jollof rice joint down the street. We talked for hours, laughing like we'd known each other forever. It wasn't long before we were spending every spare moment together. I thought I'd found the one. Looking back, there were signs from the beginning that something was off. Late at night, her phone would ring, but when she answered, there'd be no one on the other end. She'd laugh it off, saying it was probably her exes messing with her. Her apartment was another thing. It was beautifully decorated, but there were objects that felt out of place. Cowries arranged in odd patterns, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, an old clay pot in the corner. When I asked about them, she waved it off as family traditions. I ignored it. Love has a way of blinding you to the little things. One evening, Ada invited me over for dinner. She cooked egusi soup, and we sat on her couch, eating and talking. It was a perfect night, until I started hearing faint whispers. "Do you hear that?" I asked, pausing mid-sentence. "Hear what?" she replied, looking genuinely confused. The whispers were faint, almost like the wind, but they seemed to come from the walls themselves. I tried to brush it off, but as the night went on, the whispers grew louder in my mind until I could barely focus on anything else. Ida asked me to visit her family in Ogun State. I was nervous but excited. It felt like a big step in our relationship. We left Lagos early, the roads bumpy and narrow as we got closer to her village. The village itself felt strange. The air was heavier, the people quieter. As we walked through the streets, I noticed the villagers staring at Ada with a mix of fear and respect. It was subtle, but it was there. When I asked her about it, she laughed. "Small town superstition," she said, but the unease in my chest only grew stronger. Her grandmother was a frail old woman with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through me. That evening, as we sat in her hut, she pulled me aside and said, "Loving Ada is a blessing and a curse. Be careful." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, but she only shook her head and said, "You'll understand in time." Ada dismissed her grandmother's warning, calling her dramatic, but the old woman's words stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after we left the hut. Let's continue the expansion, diving deeper into the chilling narrative. Here's the next set of sections, crafted with the same immersive detail and suspense as the beginning. That night in Ada's village, I had the strangest dream. I was running through a dark forest, the trees towering above me like silent witnesses. Something was chasing me, something that moved faster than I could see, but I could feel it. The shadows of the trees stretched and twisted, their edges sharp like claws reaching for me. Just as I stumbled and fell, I woke up gasping for air. The room was dark, except for the faint light of the moon streaming through the window. I turned to check on Ada, but she wasn't in bed. My heart raced as I sat up, scanning the room. Then I saw her. She was standing by the window, completely still, staring out into the night. Ada? I called out softly, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The moonlight illuminated her perfectly, but there was no shadow beneath her. The floor around her was bare, the light untouched by the outline of her figure. I blinked, thinking I must be imagining it. Shadows don't just disappear. I stood up, my movement slow and careful, and walked toward her. Ada, are you okay? I asked, louder this time. She turned to face me, her expression blank, almost as if she didn't recognize me. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, something dark and unexplainable. Then she smiled, and just like that, the eerie moment was gone. I couldn't sleep, she said, her voice soft and calm. The moonlight's beautiful, isn't it? I nodded, forcing a smile, but I couldn't stop staring at the floor where her shadow should have been. We left the village early the next morning. Ada seemed quieter than usual, her usual laughter absent. I didn't ask her why. I was too preoccupied with the memory of the previous night. The way her shadow had vanished, the emptiness in her eyes. As we drove back to Lagos, I noticed how the air seemed to grow lighter, less oppressive. The farther we got from the village, I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was all in my head. Maybe I was just tired, or maybe I dreamed the whole thing. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was wrong. Ada seemed distant for the rest of the day. She smiled when I spoke to her, but it didn't reach her eyes. I told myself it was just fatigue from the trip, but a part of me couldn't help but wonder if she knew what I'd seen. Life in Lagos resumed as usual, but something between us had changed. Ida started disappearing for hours at a time, offering vague excuses about work or errands. When I pressed her for details, she'd brush me off with a smile and a kiss, but her affection felt hollow. I began noticing more strange occurrences. The nightmares that had started in the village continued, growing more vivid and terrifying. I'd wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, the sound of whispers still lingering in my ears. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my vision, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Ada's apartment, once a place of comfort, began to feel suffocating. The cowries and dried herbs that I'd once dismissed as harmless decorations now seemed sinister. I avoided going there unless absolutely necessary, but even in my own home, I couldn't escape the growing sense of dread. One evening, Ada told me she had errands to run and wouldn't be back until late. Something about the way she said it felt off, and my gut told me to follow her. I waited until she left, then trailed behind at a safe distance. She walked briskly through the streets, her figure illuminated by the occasional street lamp. After a while, she stopped in front of an abandoned building. The windows were boarded up, and the walls were covered in graffiti. I watched from the shadows as she pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. I waited outside, my heart pounding. Minutes passed, and then I heard it. Faint chanting, almost like a prayer, accompanied by the smell of burning herbs. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I crept closer to the building, peering through a crack in the boards. Inside, I saw Ada standing in the center of the room, her arms raised as she muttered something I couldn't understand. The light of a small fire flickered around her, casting strange, twisting shadows on the walls. Her shadow was there too, but it didn't look like her. It was larger, its movements jerky and unnatural, like it was trying to free itself from her. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty streets. Let's keep unraveling the story, section by section, deepening the suspense and haunting atmosphere. Here's the continuation. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of Ada standing in the abandoned building, a shadow twisting unnaturally against the firelight, was burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, the shadow pulling at the edges of the walls as if it were alive. By morning, I was determined to confront her. I needed answers, no matter how terrifying they might be. When I saw her later that day, she greeted me with her usual warm smile, but I could see the weariness in her eyes.